Ethan, at last. I can finally leave you. On the phone, Ryan's voice was soft, yet carried a faint, unsettling edge. Ethan's heart jolted with unease. What do you mean by that? He asked anxiously. Before he could finish, the line cut off with a sharp beep. The dread in his chest grew stronger by the second. He grabbed the coat at his side and bolted out of the company, driving home as fast as he could. But the streets that day were suffocatingly jammed. A journey that usually took half an hour dragged into more than an hour. On the way, his mind was in chaos. A stabbing pain pricked at his chest again and again, as if something vital was slipping away from his very life. By the time he finally reached home, what greeted him was billowing black smoke and flames clawing toward the sky. The searing heat warped the air, threatening to devour everything. Several people stumbled out, coughing, their faces pale with terror. Ethan rushed forward. Where is Ryan? Where is he? One man trembled violently, his face ashen, unable to meet Ethan's eyes. He stammered, unable to form an answer. Fury surged. Ethan seized him by the collar, roaring, "Did you not hear me? Where is Ryan?" The man stuttered between coughs. I woke up and the fire had already spread everywhere. I barely escaped and then I saw young master. Ethan flung him aside and dashed straight toward the inferno. His lips repeated, over and over, "He's still inside. He must still be inside." Several men rushed to restrain him. "Young master, you can't! The fire is too fierce. It's completely out of control. If anything happens to you, how could we ever answer?" To the family, another shouted, "With a blaze like this, survival is impossible." "No, impossible," Ethan muttered, shoving them away, throwing himself into the sea of flames. Inside, engulfed in smoke and fire, he staggered, shouting hoarsely, "Ryan, where are you? Ryan!" But the choking smoke stole his voice. His breath grew heavier until everything went black. When he awoke, he was lying on a hospital bed. The moment the memories of the fire returned, he ripped out the IV in his Eidendorit hand, staggering to his feet, desperate to find Ryan. Just then, Peter walked in. Ethan grabbed him at once. "Where is he? Which room? Take me to him!" Peter fell silent. Only after a long pause did he whisper, "Please, restrain your grief." Ethan's face drained of color. He stood frozen, almost unable to believe his ears. "No, impossible." "You're lying! You must be lying!" He lurched upright, trembling, muttering frantically as though speaking only to himself. "This morning before I left, he said he'd wait for me. In 2 days, we were supposed to be married. Everything was going so well." His voice shook, pushing Peter aside as he stumbled out of the ward, murmuring incoherently, "When he's discharged this time, he can go wherever he wants. I'll never lock him in again. Anything he dislikes, I won't force on him anymore. I need to get home quickly. Quickly, before I make him wait too long." But the home once full of memories was now nothing more than ruins. Charred walls, ashes scattered across the ground. Ethan stood there in silence, recalling that morning. Ryan had indeed seemed different. If only he had noticed. If only he had stayed instead of rushing to the company meeting. Maybe the bedroom that once held their warmth was now utterly empty, no trace left behind. Only now did he realize how merciless Ryan truly was. Gone, without leaving a single keepsake for him to cling to. Someone spoke softly behind him. "Young master," Ethan rasped, "Where is he now?" The man hesitated before answering. Master said, "This person was doomed from the start, that the two of you should never have been together. Now that he's gone, he was taken away." He added, "Young master, you've been unconscious for 2 days." The world tilted before Ethan's eyes. His body swayed, nearly collapsing, needing support just to stand. Today was supposed to be the day of his wedding with Ryan, but the one he was meant to marry no longer existed. Someone tried to console him. "Young master, you can have anyone you want. Why torment yourself over someone like that?" Ethan forced a smile, twisted with anguish. Yes, he's gone. Replacing him should be simple. Yet, why did his chest ache so fiercely, so much that he could hardly breathe? That night, he went to a bar. Many people gathered around him, raising glasses, congratulating him on his birthday. It was only then he realized today was his birthday. The empty flattery and hollow toasts grated on him. He rose abruptly, slipping out alone. Not far away, two men's voices reached his ears. "That Ryan kid was nothing but a doomed wretch. Thought clinging to young Master Ethan would guarantee a good life? Ha! He used to act so high and mighty. In front of me." The other asked, "You really think they had something going on?" The first man sneered. "You think young Master Ethan actually liked him? That night, I deliberately spilled wine on him and blamed it on him. Young Master believed me right away and made him drink an entire bottle. Ha ha ha!" He laughed with glee. Ethan's face darkened instantly, his expression like a storm. He lunged forward, seizing the man by the throat, murderous rage blazing. In his eyes, ready to strangle him on the spot. The other man collapsed to the ground in terror, screaming, "Murder! He's going to kill him!" The bar manager and staff rushed over, dragging Ethan away. "Young master, please calm down. If he's offended you, leave him to us." But all Ethan could see in his mind was Ryan, that stubborn, unyielding expression, refusing to admit fault. And why? Why had he never trusted him? His eyes burned hot. Without another word, he turned and left, driving straight to Ryan's old home. The small house, locked for too long, was layered with dust. If Ryan were still here, it would have been spotless, tidy. His gaze fell upon a diary left on the desk. He opened it, flipping page after page. Inside were scattered fragments of daily life, written with meticulous care. In that moment, he felt as though Ryan were still right beside him. A line caught his eye. Ethan isn't as bad as people say. Maybe he just doesn't know how to express himself, which is why others misunderstand him. The corners of Ethan's lips curled faintly, an empty, silent laugh. He kept turning pages, each one filled with memories of himself. One entry recounted how, back in 10th grade, Ryan had been cornered by a group of thugs after school. Just then, Ethan had passed by shouting, "What do you think you're doing? Get lost!" The gang had scattered at once. Ryan had dusted himself off, looked up, and smiled. "Thanks." In the diary, he had written, "After that, I realized you can't judge someone based solely on others' words. That would be unfair. I hoped that one day I could help him more. In truth, he's actually a very good person." Ethan smiled, again, but his eyes burned red, stinging. His hands clenched around the diary. So in Ryan's heart, he had once been a good person. And yet, he had been the one to destroy it all. It was then he finally understood. What he felt for Ryan was not simply liking. Ethan sank to the floor, choked sobs tearing out of him. In that moment, regret consumed him whole. He began to loathe himself. If only he hadn't treated Ryan so cruelly. Maybe their ending would have been entirely different. He recalled one time Ryan had approached him. "You failed 5 subjects. Last week. You're a student. You need to study." Ethan had scoffed, sneering. "What does that have to do with you?" But Ryan had persisted. "I just want you to do better. Next week is the monthly exam. If you do well, Uncle Jack will surely be pleased." He let out a cold laugh. And what does it matter to me whether he's pleased or not? Ryan's gaze remained patient. A streak of malice flashed in Ethan's mind. How about this? Tomorrow's a day off. If you want me to do well on the exam, then come and tutor me. Consider it repayment for my father. How's that? Ryan lowered his head, silent. Ethan sneered. What? Don't want to? I knew it. You only pretend to be kind. In the end, Ryan agreed. The next day, he arrived with books in hand. Inside the bedroom, Ethan deliberately knocked school supplies to the floor, scattering them everywhere, showing no regard for how Ryan might feel. "You owe me. So this is what you're supposed to do." He grabbed Ryan's chin, forcing him to look up, voice sharp with cruelty. "From now on, whenever I call, you'll come. Stop pretending to be proud in front of me." From that moment on, the gentleness in Ryan's eyes toward him completely vanished. Later, Ethan opened the bedside drawer and found a small tin box. Inside, to his surprise, was a photograph. In the picture, Ryan was still pure, still bright-eyed, smiling as though he were looking directly at him. His hand trembled as he stroked the photo, as if clinging to its last trace of warmth. He lay down on the bed where Ryan had once slept. Only then did he feel as if he could be closer to him, if only by a little. If only I could start over. This time, I would protect you. His consciousness grew hazy. He heard someone calling, "Classmate, you're the only one who hasn't turned in your paper." Slowly, Ethan opened his eyes. He found himself seated in a classroom, surrounded by students in uniforms, chatting and laughing. He searched desperately, and when he finally spotted the familiar figure, anxiety spilled from his lips. "Wait for me a moment." Ryan pointed at the sheet of paper on the desk. "Isn't it right here?" Ethan looked up at him, blurting out, "Wait, let me walk with you." He snatched the paper from Ryan's hand. "The forecast said it would be colder today. Let me go with you, so I can shield you from the wind." The words made Ryan laugh. "What do you like most?" Ethan asked. "I like reading," Ryan replied. "My mother said only knowledge is fair. With it, you don't need family background or complicated connections." Ethan nodded eagerly. "Auntie's absolutely right." Ryan smiled softly. "Why are you suddenly asking this?" Ethan's tone grew serious. "Ryan, haven't you always wanted me to study harder? Then, from now on, you'll be my teacher. I'll pay you like a tutor, so you'll have more living expenses. Auntie won't have to struggle so much." Ryan stared, astonished. "You really want to study?" Ethan nodded hard. Out of the corner of his eye, he noticed a girl eating ice cream. He suddenly thought he had never once seen Ryan enjoy a treat. Immediately, he dashed outside. "Wait here for me," he called back. Puzzled, Ryan asked, "Where are you going?" "Class is about to start." Before long, Ethan returned, panting, holding a melting cone. He handed it to Ryan. "Eat it before it melts. One ice cream won't make us late." Ryan took a bite, his face brightening. "It's sweet." Ethan gazed quietly at that smile, thinking to himself, "I can clearly give him so much more than this." He leaned down, gently wiping the cream from the corner of Ryan's mouth. The ambiguous gesture made Ryan's ears flush red. When Ethan opened his eyes, again his cheeks were wet. All those beautiful things. Just a dream. He ached to see Ryan once more, even knowing the boy no longer wanted to see him. "Who took you away from me?" With that thought, he drove straight to Han Cheng's home. The moment he appeared, Han Cheng's face hardened with loathing. "You again?" Ethan spoke in a rush. "Give Ryan back to me!" Han Cheng gave a sharp, mocking laugh. "You still have the gall to ask for him? If you hadn't trampled him again, how could someone that good end up with no way out?" "No, that's not true." Ethan staggered back. "He said he'd wait for me at home." Han Cheng's voice thundered with fury. "If it weren't for you, he could have lived so well. He was brilliant, and yet you buried his future with your own hands. You left him with nothing but shame and humiliation." Ethan lowered his head, silent. Han Cheng's rage burned hotter. "I saw it myself. Saw him turn into ashes." "Ethan, it was you who killed him." Only one sentence echoed in Ethan's ears. "You killed him. You killed him." He left Han Cheng's house, wandering aimlessly through the streets, clinging to his denial that Ryan was truly gone. A couple passed by, laughing and teasing each other. He stared, remembering that morning when Ryan had told him, "I'll wait for you to come home." But now, there would never again be someone to greet him with, "You're back." His body trembled. No, it's not like that. Ryan just doesn't want to see me, that's all. He's hiding. I just haven't treated him well enough yet. That must be it. He sought out Peter, his voice low and pleading. "Ryan hasn't been well lately. The medicine you prescribed, it didn't work. Could you come tonight? Check. On him?" Peter studied him silently. Ethan pressed on. "I promised I'd treat him well. I won't break my word." Peter stepped closer, placing a hand gently on his shoulder. "Ethan, Ryan is gone." Ethan stared at him blankly, eyes clouded. "Really? Gone?" With a sigh, Peter answered, "No one wanted it to end this way. Perhaps for Ryan, it was a release." Ethan returned home, sitting in Ryan's room for a long time, trying to understand what his last thoughts might have been. Outside, Li Shen knocked lightly. "Young master, are you in there?" When no reply came, he muttered to himself, "To torment yourself over someone like that. It isn't worth it. I told you, he was never the simple boy he seemed. And now, look at what's happened." The storm of rumors dragged the Ethan family into a mire of vengeance and resentment. Ethan stepped out of the room, his face ice cold. "Li Shen back then? Did you truly see Ryan push Dylan down the stairs?" Li Shen froze, hesitated, then answered, "Why is young master asking about this now? When I arrived, Dylan was already lying on the ground, but Ryan was still standing in the corridor." Ethan's eyes widened. "So, you never actually saw him push?" Flustered, Li Shen replied, "But the scene spoke for itself. Wasn't it obvious?" A bitter laugh tore from Ethan's throat. He remembered the surveillance footage he'd once seen. Ryan, frail and unsteady, barely able to stand, let alone shove someone. Everything. He had willfully ignored. His voice was low, edged with steel. "Li Shen, you're old now. Retire. Go home." Shock flashed across Li Shen's face. The Ethan household had been his life. "Young master, you would cast me out for a dead boy? I've served this family for over 20 years. Before he could finish, Ethan hurled a porcelain vase to the floor. It shattered, shards scattering. His eyes blazed with lethal frost. "Get out!" From that day on, Ethan drowned himself in liquor, drunk every single night. That day, he was sleeping in a drunken haze when the sound of a child's cries jolted him awake. The pounding hangover only worsened his irritation. He snapped, "Go see who's crying!" A moment later, a subordinate returned carrying a baby. "Young master, someone abandoned this child at the door. Perhaps they saw the villa was luxurious." The mother left a letter saying she has a terminal illness and cannot raise the child, so she entrusted him here. Ethan froze. The mother has a terminal illness. That was exactly how it had been with Ryan. He looked at the baby, whose tiny face was flushed red from crying. With trembling hands, he reached out. Strangely, the moment the child was in his arms, he stopped crying, even smiling innocently. Ethan lowered his head to take a closer look and was stunned. Those eyes looked so much like Ryan's. The subordinate asked cautiously, "Young, master, should we call the police or contact social services?" "No need. Find me a nanny skilled at taking care of children. And check the legal procedures for adoption. Get it done immediately." Cradling the baby firmly against his chest, he declared, "From today he is my son. If my father asks, say he is my own flesh and blood." From that moment on, Ethan resolved to pull himself together and raise the child well. Time slipped by. 2 years passed. One morning, on his way to the company, a familiar back made him slam on the brakes. He rushed out of the car and gripped the man's arm tightly. "Ryan." The man turned around, surprised at first, then overjoyed. "Young Master Ethan, I never thought I'd meet you here." Ethan stiffened. The man continued excitedly. "Thanks to your help last time, my younger brother finally found a suitable marrow donor. You are the greatest benefactor of our family." Just then, his girlfriend came over and affectionately linked arms with him. Smiling blissfully, he introduced her. Watching their intimacy, a sour ache spread through Ethan's chest. He whispered, "Treat her well." Then he turned away, his eyes already wet. The same situation, yet a completely different ending. If only back then he hadn't forced Ryan into despair. If they could meet again now, would Ryan also be smiling so brightly? For 2 years, the name Ryan had been a thorn lodged deep in his heart, a wound that burned whenever touched. 2 years later, the baby he had taken in was already running, around on chubby legs. The moment he came home, little Alan toddled over with outstretched arms, babbling, "Papa, hug!" Ethan scooped him up with adoration. "Alan is so good today, even running out to greet Papa." The boy pouted, his voice quivering. "Papa! Hoo-hoo!" A servant hurried over, trembling as she held a torn photograph in her hands. "Young master, I only stepped out to take a phone call." "The little master sneaked into your room and tore this photo." Ethan's face instantly darkened. He set the child down, grabbed a feather whip, and raised it, only for Alan to burst into sobs. "How dare you?" The servant shielded the boy. "He's still small. Please don't be angry." Through his tears, the child gazed up pitifully. "Papa! Alan was wrong. Don't be mad." Ethan drew a long breath, then finally lowered the whip. "Take him!" "Away. I want silence." Alone in his room, he massaged his temples. When his fury subsided, he carefully pieced the torn photo back together. His fingers trembled as they brushed across the face in the picture. He whispered softly, "Ryan, even now, I still can't forget you. I often see you in my dreams, only to wake and realize it was all an illusion." His voice grew, faint. "Sometimes I wish I could live forever inside that dream." After a long while, he stepped into Alan's room. Looking at the boy's face, with faint traces of resemblance to Ryan, his heart twisted, almost deceiving him into believing Ryan had never left, that he was still by his side. He took Alan to the amusement park. Most there were families, both, parents with their children. Men like him, bringing only a child without a mother, were rare. While he was on the phone, a sudden familiar cry pierced the air. He rushed over. "What happened?" The servant, holding the wailing child, stammered, "I don't know. The young master was playing happily, then suddenly started crying, and I couldn't calm him down." The moment Alan saw him, his cries only grew louder. Ethan frowned and snapped. Unexpectedly, the scolding made the boy sob even harder, choking on his tears. He bent down, scooping the child into his arms, softening his tone. "Don't cry, Bea. Good. Papa, sorry. I shouldn't have raised my voice. Tell me what's wrong." The child rubbed his eyes, hiccuping. "Everyone else has a mama. Why don't I have one?" Ethan froze, unable to respond. The little boy clutched his shirt, voice trembling. I want a mama too." He lowered his head silently, gently wiping the tears from that small face, but no words came. Just then, a boy passing by handed Alan his candy. "Here, don't cry." The man walking behind quickly stopped him. "You're too little for candy." At that voice, Ethan's head snapped up. For an instant, the world seemed to freeze. The man smiled at the boy. "Owen, let's go home." Ethan stood rooted, his whole body trembling. Even Alan stopped crying, staring blankly at that gentle face. Father and son, both stood as if turned to stone. When the man began to walk away, Ethan finally stirred. hastily handed Alan to the servant, strode forward and blocked the man's path. "Can we be friends? You look very much like someone I once knew." The man smiled faintly, politely declining. "Sir, that sort of approach works better on young ladies." Ethan faltered, about to speak again, but the man's phone rang. Answering. Quickly, he slipped past and walked away. From behind, Ethan called out hoarsely, "Ryan!" But there was no response, only the silhouette retreating further into the distance. Too similar. Far too similar. Yet if it truly were him, how could he be so calm upon meeting again? Back home, he had no heart left to care for Alan. He went straight to the park manager, tossing over a check. "Take this. I want every piece of surveillance footage from this afternoon." With the recordings in hand, he immediately ordered an investigation into the man's identity. Before long, the report came back. "Sir, the man you met at the park is the second young master of the Paul family. Paul. He lived abroad since childhood and only recently returned." Ethan frowned. "The Paul family? Didn't they only have one son, Felix? Because he grew up overseas, no one knew. They brought him back to expand the family business. And besides..." "What else? He already has a young, beautiful fiancée." The news struck like lightning, shattering the last sliver of hope. Ethan slumped into his chair, clutching his head in anguish. Since Ryan's departure, this had been his life. The torment he once inflicted now turned back upon himself, gnawing at him without end. Only after swallowing medicine did the pain in his skull ease. A knock sounded. His assistant entered, carrying a contract. "Young master, this is the cooperation agreement with the Paul family. The project's lead is Paul." Ethan ran his fingers over that name. If, back then, he had known how to treat him better, perhaps Ryan would have been like in the photo, smiling radiantly instead of always appearing sickly and frail. Just then, the door swung open. Little Alan trotted inside, his big round eyes sparkling. "Papa! Papa!" Exhausted, Ethan had no desire to pay attention. The boy always asked questions that stabbed at his heart. Every time he was disturbed, a pounding headache followed. Alan stretched out his tiny arms, whining softly. "Papa, carry me." Looking into those hopeful eyes, he finally picked the child up. Sure enough, the next question came, sharp as a blade. "Papa, where did my mama go?" Ethan froze, a flicker of impatience in his voice. "You were picked up by me from a crack between the rocks by the road. Don't ask again." Alan blinked in confusion for a moment, then suddenly burst into tears, sobbing so hard that it twisted one's heart. At the sight, Ethan softened. He hurried to wipe away the tears and coaxed gently. "All right, no more crying, Alan. You don't have a mother, but you still have a father." The boy gradually stopped crying, his wide eyes staring up at him in doubt. Ethan continued. "That person is very kind, very outstanding. But because I made mistakes, he left me." Alan asked curiously, "Who is that person?" Ethan picked up the photo on the desk. "Remember the picture you tore up last time? The person in it. That's him." Alan studied the photo carefully, then said in his childish voice, "Isn't he the uncle I met before? He looks a lot like you, Papa." Ethan didn't answer right away. Even now, he wasn't sure if that man was truly Ryan, or just someone else entirely. The servants came to take Alan for a bath, leaving the room finally quiet. Ethan set the photo of Ryan next to the documents on Paul, comparing them. At first glance, they looked almost identical, yet the aura was distinctly different. Could it be possible, in this world, for two people to truly look exactly alike? That night, Ethan had a dream. In it, Ryan asked in a low voice, "After you get married, will you buy a house outside to keep me in?" Ethan wanted to reply, "No, I won't marry anyone else." But his throat was locked, no sound came. Ryan covered his face and wept. I'm a person too, with thoughts and feelings of my own. All I ever wanted was to study hard, but you refused. To let me go! I don't dare talk to anyone. I live in shadows every day. I'm terrified people will find out just how filthy and pathetic I am. Ethan struggled to apologize, but no words would leave his mouth. Ryan's eyes turned mocking. In your eyes, what am I? Panicked, Ethan cried out, Ryan, you're the one I love. I really do love you. Yet, right before him, all he could do was watch helplessly as Ryan was swallowed by fire. Desperate, he screamed, Ryan, don't leave me. He jolted awake, drenched in cold sweat, gasping for breath. Pain split his skull apart. He reached for his medicine, only to find the bottle empty. In fury, he hurled it against the floor, clutching his face as tears slipped through his fingers. Ryan, look at me. I'm still trapped in the past. I can't get out. 4 hours. Of sleep a day, that was all he managed. His body wouldn't last much longer. Peter frowned, writing a new prescription. If this keeps up, your body will collapse. Taking the pills, Ethan's voice trembled. Felix has returned. The name made Peter freeze. After a pause, he forced out. He is who he is. I am who I am. There's no connection between us anymore. Ethan let out a weary sigh. I hope so. Peter looked at him, wanting to console. Ethan, the past is long gone. But before he could finish, Ethan cut in coldly. My business is my own. Once he left, sorrow clouded Peter's face. So many years had passed. Surely Felix had long forgotten everything. Back then, Peter had been his senior, the two of them once close. That year, he had cheerfully confided to Felix, Anna is a good girl. I truly like her. She said she'll take me to meet her parents by the end of the year. Felix smiled in congratulations. Congratulations, senior. Peter was too caught up in his joy to notice the look on his face. If everything goes smoothly, we'll marry early next year. I hope you'll come to the wedding. Of course, I'll be there, Felix replied. Normally, Peter could handle his liquor. But that day, after just a few glasses, his head spun. When he woke again, only a robe covered him. His clothes lay scattered across the floor. His body ached everywhere. Lifting his sleeve, he saw bruises mottling his skin. In the mirror, red marks marred his neck and chest. It was unthinkable. Had he really suffered such humiliation? When he stumbled out of the bathroom, Felix was already seated inside. Instinctively, Peter tried to cover himself. Felix smirked. What's the point of hiding? Everything there was to see. I saw it all last night. What's left to be embarrassed about now? Peter froze, unable to grasp the meaning. What are you saying? Felix stepped forward, gripping his shoulders and slamming him against the wall. Senior, I treated you so well. How could you go after someone else? Panicked, Peter stammered. Felix, you're misunderstanding. We're both men. I've always seen you as a younger brother. As for me and Anna, you know about us. I must have been too drunk last night. Whatever happened, it was a mistake. Let's just forget it ever happened. He shoved Felix away, but the younger man wasn't letting go. Snatching his phone, Felix dialed Anna's number and calmly said the words of a breakup. On the other end, her voice trembled with worry. Peter, where were you last night? I called and called, but you didn't answer. Peter froze, blurting hastily. Anna, I went drinking with friends. I overdid it. Don't worry. Relieved, she said softly. Do you want me to bring medicine for you? Please don't drink. That much again. But Felix's face darkened. He hadn't called to hear them exchange sweet words. He had called to destroy everything. He suddenly pressed in close, lips brushing, bodies colliding. A faint sound carried through the phone. Anna asked in surprise. What was that? Flustered, Peter stammered. Nothing. I just bumped into... Wait, the door! Leaning to his ear, Felix murmured darkly. She should know what her boyfriend did last night. Shaking, Peter ended the call at once. Felix smirked. What's wrong? Afraid? His voice quivered. She's the first girl I've ever loved. And Felix cut him off, jealousy dripping in every word. Break up with her. I won't allow anyone else between us. Felix, don't do this. But the boy softened, eyes glowing with obsession. Senior, don't make me angry. In what way am I inferior to her? Wouldn't it be better if we were together? Peter turned his head away. But we're both men. Feigning innocence, Felix whispered, but last night you were the one who wouldn't let go, clinging to me. So tell me, what's wrong with us? You're insane. Peter shouted, shoving him off and rushing for the door. But in an instant, Felix slammed him down, pinning him in place. From today onward, you're not going anywhere. At the toy store, Ethan was helping Alan choose something. Suddenly, a familiar voice reached his ears. He turned around, and to his shock, he came face to face with Paul. Standing beside him, along with the little boy Ethan had seen at the park, was an elegantly dressed woman, her arm linked with his in an intimate gesture. She was surely the fiancée his subordinates had mentioned. The sight of them together made Ethan's chest tighten. He clenched the toy in his hand. A shop assistant approached. Sir, may I help you find something? Hearing the voice, Paul also turned his head. For a single second, their eyes met. Then, just as quickly, he looked away, treating him as nothing more than a stranger. Ethan's lips parted, yet no words came. Paul only smiled gently at the woman. Let's go. He watched the three figures leave together, their backs forming the picture of a warm family. After paying, Ethan stepped outside. Suddenly, a man dashed past, and the woman's panicked cry rang out. He stole my purse! Stop him! Paul shouted. Ethan reacted at once, sprinting after the thief. In moments, he had subdued him. Paul and the woman hurried over in alarm. Thank you, sir, he said. At that word, sir! Ethan's heart trembled. To him, he was just a stranger. Right then, the thief suddenly pulled out a knife and lunged. Watch out! Paul cried. The blade sliced across Ethan's arm, blood spilling. Instantly, the thief shoved him hard and fled. His clothes darkened with blood, yet he seemed not to feel the pain. Seeing the wound, Paul asked anxiously, Do you need to go to a hospital? Ethan shook his head. No need. The woman beside him fretted. Oh dear, are you all right? Owen, quickly, take this gentleman to the hospital. Paul reassured her with a smile. Don't worry, I'll take him. But to Ethan, it only felt like watching from the outside. To see Paul showing concern for someone else in front of him, this hurt more than the knife wound itself. Quietly, he said, If you really wish to repay me, could you grant me one request? Let me see. Your left wrist. Paul hesitated, then reluctantly pulled up his sleeve. Go ahead. Ethan's eyes widened in shock. There was nothing there. At that moment, Paul's phone rang. When he pulled it out, Ethan caught sight of the name on the screen, Han Cheng. While Paul stepped aside to answer, Ethan studied him carefully. The face identical to Ryan's, every little movement the same. Yet where Ryan had been reserved, this man was straightforward, even blunt. When the call ended, Ethan asked nervously, You know Han Cheng? Unwilling to have his private matters probed, Paul's expression cooled. My personal life. It has nothing to do with you. I didn't mean it like that. Ethan hurried to explain. I know Professor Han as well. But Paul cut him off. Thank you for today. If you're not going to the hospital... He took out a wad of cash and held it out. Consider this for your medical expenses. Ethan stared blankly, mistaking. His silence, Paul added another stack. Is this enough? Take it. A bitter laugh escaped him. In all his years, no one had ever tried to compensate him with money before. He waved it away. I don't need it. I only want to know, how long have you known Hancheng? And do you truly have no memory of me at all? Paul's face darkened. I've only seen you twice. As for Hancheng, he's a close friend. That's all there is to say. Once more, he pressed the money forward. Take it. I don't want to owe anyone. Ethan suddenly caught his hand. Do you really remember nothing of the past? Paul jerked away, eyes cold. You're asking too much. Shoving the money into his hand, he turned and left with the woman. Holding the thick bundle of bills, Ethan let out a bitter smile. He could not yet be certain this man was truly Ryan, but he was convinced there was some unbreakable connection between them. Meanwhile, Paul himself fell silent in thought. Since, waking, the only memory implanted into him was this. He was the Paul family's second young master, and his father was gravely ill. But strangely, he did not feel grief as one might expect. Yet, every time he stepped into the hospital, a strange familiarity gnawed at him. Noticing his pallor, Helen asked, Paul, what are you thinking? Are you feeling unwell? He shook his head. It's nothing. Just a bit dizzy. Resting will help. Owen clutched a toy, his eyes shining. Last time I met that boy, he kept crying. I want to give him this. Helen smiled fondly. Owen really is such a good child. Next time we see him, I'll ask his parents for their contact information, so you can play together often. But Paul frowned. Owen already has plenty of classmates. There's no need to chase after a child with an unclear background. Helen blinked in surprise. Paul, what's wrong with you today? He only smiled faintly. It's nothing. Later at the mall, I want to buy you a gift. Pleased, she leaned her head against his shoulder, while Paul's mind churned. That man always left him breathless, suffocated. His instincts screamed that he must never get entangled with him. At the jewelry store in the mall, he bought Helen a bracelet. Just then, a young woman with tear-reddened eyes approached, her voice trembling. I thought I'd never see you again. He was certain she was speaking to him, but she had not called him by his name. Hearing the commotion, Helen asked, Paul, do you know her? He shook his head. No. Lily's eyes widened. You don't know me. Have you forgotten? I'm Lily, your university classmate. Whenever I didn't understand something, you were the one who taught me. The woman at his side quickly stepped in. You've mistaken him. Paul doesn't know you. Lily shook her head. Impossible. Ryan, do you know what my life has been like these past 2 years, ever since I heard you died in that fire? At the word fire, Paul shuddered violently, a sharp pain stabbing through his skull. Are you all right? Helen asked anxiously. You're getting another headache. Let me take you to the hospital. Lily's voice broke as she whispered, Are you really? Not Ryan. Annoyed, Helen snapped, Of course not. Paul just returned from overseas. Stop mistaking him for someone else. She pulled him close and led him away. Outside the mall, the headache subsided. Paul told her, I'm fine now. Probably just not used to the climate after coming back. It's late, let me take you home. Pouting, Helen said, Then let's drop Owen off first. Tonight I'll stay with you, all right? He looked slightly uncomfortable. Sorry, you should go home and rest, and I still have things to do tonight. Her face darkened. She gripped his arm tightly. Owen's still waiting in the car. Let's go. She looked at him, her voice laced with quiet reproach. I can't help but feel you don't really care about me. Paul smiled. You're overthinking it. How could I not care? Everything you like, I want to give to you. Helen pouted. Then why have you never let me stay the night? You always want to send me home early. His voice softened. Because we're not married yet. I want to be more responsible with you. But that answer did not please Helen. She grew a little sulky, and Paul had to take her hand, coaxing her gently until she finally calmed down. Before long, He dropped Helen and Owen off at their home. When night fell, he was left alone. Sitting on the sofa, Paul's face gradually twisted in torment. Why is there no reaction at all? He tried desperately to claw through the fragments of his missing memories. For a fleeting instant, two silhouettes seemed to overlap in his mind. Flames roared up, swallowing him whole in a blazing illusion, the searing pain in his skull threatening to split it open. At that moment, Ethan sat staring at the thick stack of bills Paul had shoved into his hand. The corner of his lips curved, faintly. This was, in a way, the very first thing Paul had ever given him. Softly he whispered Ryan's name. If Paul truly was Ryan, then he had already forgotten everything of their past. But just knowing that person was still alive filled Ethan with a joy so fierce he could not put it into words. He carefully tucked the money into his wallet. Yet when he thought of how the other man only regarded him as a stranger, his eyes turned, misty against his will. Just then, he heard Alan's voice calling outside the door. Hastily, he wiped his tears dry. Ignoring the nanny's protests, the little boy had already burst through the door. Ethan picked up the toy train he had bought and smiled. "Come here. Daddy got you a new toy." Alan stumbled toward him, arms outstretched, chanting, "Daddy, hug!" He lifted his son into his arms, gazing at that small face. "Only half a day apart, and you've already changed shape." The boy blinked his wide, round eyes and thrust out an arm with a mosquito bite, tugging his father's hand over it, wanting him to scratch it. Ethan's voice grew stern. "No scratching." The child squirmed in protest, and by accident pressed against his father's wounded arm. His eyes went wide, and he burst into loud sobs. The wailing made Ethan irritable. He set the boy down. "Cry, cry. Cry all day long. That's all you do!" A servant rushed over with a first aid kit, helping him rebandage his arm. His voice softened again. "Alan, if you keep crying, your other dad won't like it when he finds out." "Really?" The boy's eyes widened. He crouched down, speaking seriously. "Really. Today, when I bought you the train, your dad even reminded me." The tears gradually ebbed. "Daddy, that's the handsome uncle, right?" Ethan froze. He didn't know how to respond. He wanted to believe Paul was Ryan, but there were still far too many doubts. He offered the toy train. "Come on, I'll teach you how to play." The boy's eyes lit up, quickly forgetting why he had been crying. After a while, seeing his son absorbed in play, Ethan spoke gently. "Daddy's going out for a bit. You play and then go to bed early, all right?" Alan didn't even look up. Stepping out onto the balcony, Ethan lifted his eyes to the night sky, whispering, "Do you know, Alan really likes you. Come back soon. I miss you too." Ethan later accepted an invitation to a banquet, never expecting to see Paul there as well. His gaze followed quietly. When their eyes met across the room, he instinctively edged away from the woman beside him, afraid Paul might misunderstand. But Paul didn't come over. He simply turned and walked away. Suddenly, someone jostled into him, spilling a glass of red wine down his shirt. Paul didn't complain. He merely asked his assistant to bring him clean clothes and went into the washroom to wipe away the stain. The bandage wrapped around his left wrist had soaked through with wine. He tore it off and stared at the scar beneath, baffled. "Why does Hancheng insist I keep this hidden? What exactly is being kept from me?" Suddenly, a strong hand seized his wrist, a pair of eyes locking fiercely onto the scar.